5 women were butchered in the span of 10 weeks. The killer was never identified. And over a century later, not one of the hundreds of suspects has ever been proven guilty. This is the story of Jack the Ripper. Here is what most people don't know. The murders weren't just violent. They were surgical, deliberate. Someone out there in the fog of 1888 London possessed a level of anatomical knowledge that terrified the doctors who examined the bodies. One senior physician said privately that whoever did this had to have held a scalpel before. And yet, with dozens of witnesses, a citywide manhunt, and letters written directly to the press, this killer simply vanished. But here's what's going to stay with you. One of those letters contained something that had no business being inside an envelope. Something that meant the writer either had access to the crime scenes or was the killer himself. I'll get to that. There's also a document, a sealed report written by the lead investigator. He believed he knew who Jack the Ripper was. He named a suspect. And then he kept it quiet for the rest of his life. And then there's the final murder. The one that was different from all the others. The one that happened indoors. The one that took hours. Whitechapel, 1888. East London. A district so overcrowded, so desperate, that human life had almost no currency here. Thousands of people crammed into crumbling tenements. Women selling themselves on street corners to survive the night. Police stretched impossibly thin. This is the world the Ripper chose. Not randomly, strategically. The late summer of that year, something shifted. The streets already ran with misery. They were about to run with something else. August 31st, 1888. A cart driver named Charles Cross is walking to work before dawn when he notices something lying in the gutter of Bucks Row. He thinks it's a tarpaulin. He walks closer. It is Mary Ann Nichols, 43 years old. Mother of 5. Her throat has been cut twice. The mutilations to her abdomen are severe enough that the examining physician, Dr. Rees Ralph Llewellyn, would later testify they required some anatomical knowledge. She had been dead less than 30 minutes. The killer was gone. The street was empty. Nobody heard a sound. 8 days later, September 8th, Annie Chapman, 47, found in the backyard of a lodging house on Hanbury Street. Her wounds were worse, far worse. Organs had been removed with precision. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, who examined her body, was so disturbed by the nature of the cuts that he initially refused to describe them in open court. He said only that he believed the killer had possessed considerable skill with a knife. The city was beginning to understand what it was dealing with. Then came the night that changed everything. September 30th, 1888. 2 murders in a single night. Elizabeth Stride, 45, is found in Dutfield's yard just after 1 in the morning. Her throat is cut, but unlike the others, she has not been mutilated. Investigators later theorized the killer was interrupted, that someone came close, that he ran. And then, within the hour, less than a mile away, Catherine Eddowes is found in Mitre Square. This time, the killer had time. The mutilations were extensive, and something was missing from the scene. A piece of her apron had been cut away and carried off. That piece of apron would surface 30 minutes later, left beside a wall in Goulston Street. Above it, scrawled in chalk, were words. Words that sparked a controversy that is still unresolved today. The U's are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, ordered the message scrubbed from the wall before dawn. His reason? He feared it would incite anti-Semitic riots. To this day, no one knows if that message was written by the killer. If you have a theory forming already, keep it in mind. I'll ask you about it at the end. The investigation was handed to Detective Inspector Frederick Aberline, a seasoned officer who knew Whitechapel better than almost anyone in the force. He led a team that canvassed hundreds of addresses, interviewed thousands of residents, and chased down lead after lead. The investigation was enormous. It was also, by almost every measure, a failure. Suspects came in waves: a leather apron factory worker, a Polish immigrant, a doctor, a barrister, a prince. The police had no forensic science in the modern sense. No fingerprints, no DNA, no surveillance. What they had were eyewitness accounts that contradicted each other and a city of 4 million people who all became suspects overnight. But here's where it gets stranger. In late September and early October of 1888, letters began arriving, sent to the Central News Agency, signed by the killer. The most famous, dated September 27th, was written in red ink. The writer mocked the police, said he was down on whores, said he would keep killing, and signed off with a name that would echo through history: Jack the Ripper. Most investigators, then and now, believed the letters were a hoax, written by a journalist to generate copy. But then a second communication arrived, a small cardboard postcard, postmarked October the 1st, mentioning both murders from the night of September 30th, written before the newspapers had fully reported them, which means the writer knew something. And then came the package. On October 16th, a man named George Lusk, chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received a small box in the post. Inside was half a preserved human kidney and a letter that read, "I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you." It said it had been fried and eaten. It said the writer was keeping the other half. Catherine Eddowes had been missing a kidney. Dr. Thomas Openshaw of the London Hospital examined it. He concluded the kidney was human, female, from a woman approximately 45 years old, preserved in spirits of wine consistent with a short time post-mortem. That kidney was real. The question of who sent it has never been answered, but the most disturbing part is still ahead. November 9th, 1888. Mary Jane Kelly, 25 years old, the youngest victim, the only one killed indoors. Her body was found in her small rented room at 13 Miller's Court by her landlord's assistant, who came to collect overdue rent. He looked through the broken window pane. He said afterward he would never forget what he saw. The scene inside that room was unlike anything the investigators had ever encountered. The pathologist, Dr. Thomas Bond, wrote in his report that the injuries to Mary Kelly's body were so extensive that it took him hours simply to catalog them. Bond also noted something that has fascinated investigators ever since. He believed the killer had remained in that room for a very long time, hours, and that there was evidence a fire had burned so intensely in the hearth that it had melted the solder off the kettle. Why the fire? What was it burning? Nobody knows. After Kelly's murder, the killings stopped. No confirmed Ripper victim was ever found again. The case never went cold because it was never officially solved. It simply went quiet. Now consider the women themselves. Mary Ann Nichols had been married, a mother, before poverty dissolved everything she had. Annie Chapman supported herself selling flowers and crochet work when she could. Elizabeth Stride had survived a shipwreck. Catherine Eddowes had walked 40 miles to return to London looking for work. Mary Jane Kelly was barely into her 20s, working class, Irish, surviving by whatever means she could in the cheapest lodging Whitechapel offered. These were not nameless faces in a horror story. They were women trapped by the same grinding poverty that made them invisible to the city around them. After they died, they became famous. In life, no one was looking. Their families mostly stayed silent, disappeared into history. The shame of the era swallowed their grief whole. Now the theories. The first, a doctor. From early in the investigation, medical professionals pointed to the precision of the wounds. In 2019, a forensic pathology study concluded the killings showed evidence of someone with surgical training. The prime suspect in this line of thinking is Montague John Druitt, a barrister and teacher who drowned in the Thames in December 1888, weeks after the final murder. Melville Macnaghten, an assistant commissioner who joined Scotland Yard shortly after the murders, wrote a confidential memo in 1894 naming Druitt as his prime suspect, calling him sexually insane. Druitt's family were reportedly aware of the reason he had died. The timing of his death is exact, but there is no physical evidence linking him to a single crime scene. None. The second, a royal conspiracy. In the 1970s, a theory emerged connecting the murders to the British royal family. The claim was that the women had knowledge of a secret marriage involving Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria, and were blackmailing the palace. The murders were a cover-up sanctioned at the highest levels. Surgeon Sir William Gull was named. The theory captured the world's imagination. It also has almost no credible evidential foundation. Most serious historians regard it as compelling fiction. The third, Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-born barber living in Whitechapel, known to police at the time. Macnaghten's memo names him as a suspect. In 2019, a researcher named Jari Louhelainen claimed to have extracted DNA from a shawl allegedly found near Catherine Eddowes and matched mitochondrial DNA to Kosminski's descendants. The claim generated headlines. It also generated fierce academic criticism. The chain of custody of that shawl is broken. The methodology has been challenged. The result has not been independently replicated. He may have been the Ripper. He may have been an innocent man destroyed by proximity to history's most famous unsolved case. The fog of 1888 never lifted. More than 500 suspects have been named. The files have been opened and reopened. The letters have been tested. The witness statements have been analyzed by everyone from FBI profilers to forensic linguists. And still, no answer. The killer chose the darkest streets in the most desperate corner of a city that wasn't looking. And whoever he was, he knew exactly what he was doing. So what do you think really happened? Who was responsible? Tell me your theory in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Next week, Cold Files Global travels to a different country for a case that stayed buried for decades until one family refused to stop asking questions. Subscribe